the final part of this guide, I want to discuss trauma and PTSD. So I said before that the majority of people, the mental health problems that they have usually just come down to like depression and anxiety, depressive symptoms and anxious symptoms. And that usually comes way more from literally just modern day habits. A lot of people don't like to hear this. A lot of people like to think that they've got like some biological issue or anything. But the majority of people who are depressed or anxious are like that simply because of their habits. And if you can accept that and think to yourself, yeah, like I actually don't have any biological reason to be depressed or anything. It's just simply because I've been indulging in instant gratification. I've been watching porn for 6 hours a day. So of course I feel depressed. But there is something a lot more severe than these habitual mental illnesses, and that is trauma. Trauma is a very significant, dangerous experience which changes you forever. So this is not just, I play too much video games and that's why I feel depressed, or, my diet's really shit and that's why I feel really anxious because, I'm eating fried Western food and that's fucking up my gut microbiome. Trauma, we could say, it causes PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So trauma is, for example, you're walking through the street one night alone and suddenly out of nowhere, you just get fucking punched. You drop to the floor and people are kicking you, robbing you, could be being in a car crash. These are things that can cause trauma in people. And the research on trauma and the psychologists who have written books on them, the wording that they use is that trauma may be curable, or at least the symptoms of trauma can be relieved. And there's good treatment now for trauma. Things like EMDR. It's like a form of therapy. You see the therapist and they do stuff like this and it just helps you process the events. And traditional talking therapy sometimes can help. There's more complicated versions of trauma which are no longer just one event. So, you could get trauma from a car crash. That's one event. Or, you've been mugged, you've been attacked. That's an event. There's such a thing called complex PTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And complex PTSD, CPTSD, is where you will go through lots of traumatic incidents. And it's pretty much always down to childhood abuse. So when you're a child and you're totally dependent on your parents, but your parent is being abusive, your parent shouts at you, threatens you, slaps you, emotionally neglects you, sexually abuses you, there's no escape from that. When you're a child, generally, this can become a lot more severe, and it's actually estimated that, I'm not sure the exact figure, but a lot of people have experienced childhood abuse. I believe it's 1 in 4 and maybe more. Chances are if you're watching this video and you've gotten a bunch of the symptoms that we talk about, you very clearly know your mental health is bad. If you think back to your childhood experience with your parents, what was it like? There's very clear signs of abuse, like your parent screaming at you, slapping you, threatening you, hurting you. And there's also somewhat invisible signs of abuse, things like emotional neglect, essentially believing that your parents just didn't really love you. And a lot of us have experienced that. And the reason why this is so damaging is because when you're a child, you soak up everything. You believe everything that your parent says and does. So what goes on to a child's mind when the child is being beaten or hurt or screamed or threatened or ignored by their parents? It's like your brain convinces you that you're a bad person, you're worthless, you're not worthy of love. It's very tricky for me to give you real good advice here because this is something that I'm on my own journey to improve on. I have symptoms and the understanding that I have CPTSD, complex PTSD, because of childhood abuse. And the more I look into it, the more I work into it, the more I become aware of just how many symptoms I have, the way that I behave in relationships, the physical symptoms of just anxiety and stress and hypervigilance and faster heartbeats. And, I track my heart rate on this. My heart rate's way higher than it should be at athlete performance. My heart rate should be about 45. It's actually about 60. My heart rate variability, HRV, is very low. It should be maybe double what it is. And we think that this is probably caused from things like trauma. So if you feel like you have trauma or CPTSD here, I've done a fair amount of research on this, and it's of my understanding right now, there's kind of 2 methods that you can use to improve symptoms of trauma and CPTSD, and these are called top-down and bottom-up. Essentially what this means is that the top-down model is that we start and we focus on the brain, and if we do things that improve our brain, it will help the rest of our body. And then likewise, The other approach is that if we start bottom up, we do things that improve our body and that will help our brain. So this is where trauma treatments, like self-help treatments, can come in. Things like journaling and therapy change your brain, especially things like, for example, CBT can help you with these like cognitive, neurological wiring of beliefs and, like all brain sciencey stuff. When you change your brain, your body can respond. And we've discussed a lot of this in this guide. So for example, in the physical health section of this guide, we've essentially explained the bottom-up method of relieving CPTSD, which is, okay, we focus on the body, we can focus on things like sunlight, diet, exercise, and these are all bodily things that we can focus on, which then improve our brain. And then likewise, we can switch it around and we can do things that improve our brain, things like journaling, things like being in love, things like therapy, and those things can help us ease the symptoms that we get in our body. To be honest, I'm not sure if I really have good advice for this section of the guide because I'm still learning as I go along. And this is a very, very complicated subject. Mental health, I think, especially mental health that's come from poor modern habits, is something that I've gained a good level of experience on, but with complex PTSD and trauma, it's a whole new ball game. What I can say is, if you do relate to having CPTSD or trauma, be grateful for it. I wouldn't be here where I am today if it wasn't for the experiences that I had in childhood. Because I have CPTSD, because I went through childhood abuse, I am the man I am today, and I have such a focus on things like mental health and self-improvements that then I've been able to come online and teach these things, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm glad how my life has turned out. And so of course that means all of the bad things too. That's the one thing I can suggest to you is find a way to feel grateful and to almost rewrite the story of your trauma, your abuse. Rewrite it and take control of it. Instead of it's, something unfortunate that happened to you, rewrite it and think to yourself, I'm grateful for it because I used it as an opportunity to accelerate and slingshot myself to make more progress. We're just going to go through some questions that some people have asked me related to mental health. We have a question from Night King. Hey Hamza, silly question, but how do you always find something to talk about with people you meet every once in a while? My mind goes completely blank, so I struggle with starting/continuing conversations. So Night King has asked, how do you find something to talk about with everyone that you see? And I would actually change this question, because a lot of young men ask this question, like, how do you not run out of things to say? And I always tell them, no, you're asking the wrong question. It's not that you should be asking how to not run out of things to say. It's that you should be asking how to be comfortable with silence in a conversation. Whenever I speak to someone, especially a young guy who's feeling a little bit nervous, I always know that he hasn't really leveled up his social skills when he just keeps talking and talking and talking, and he's just talking about everything. He's flipping around subject. It's totally fine in a conversation to just stop. If you have nothing to say, it's authentic for you to say nothing. Our Dorga, what would you say to someone struggling mentally being in school and considering dropping out? And what are your views on dropping out of school, specifically high school? We'll focus on his question about someone struggling mentally in school. School is... I have a very negative opinion of school and the education system. And a lot of the times you hear like YouTubers or creators talk about this, they always like pussy around it and everything. I'm very, very serious in my criticism of the education system, especially in the West. I think it's been bastardized, and I don't think it's actually helpful for students. I don't think a student comes out at age 18 actually educated on anything worthwhile. They don't know how to run a business. They don't know how to do their taxes. They don't know how to get into a relationship. They don't even know how to work hard or be productive by themselves. They know nothing. And the pressure that goes on for students is absolutely abysmal. How students are being made to just revise for these extremely high pressure, high stress exams that it's told will determine the rest of their lives. Bro, I could rant about this stuff for a while. I really think the education system needs to be reformed. Perhaps I'll be the one to do it 10, 20 years from now if I get into like politics or something. What would I say to someone struggling mentally in school? You're not alone. That's the common experience of all the students around you. Another thing I would say is that you're not special. The same things that will improve everyone else's mental health will do yours too. A lot of students, with their poor mental health and lack of judgment, incorrectly give up the things that would actually keep them mentally healthy, that then would improve their studies and their results. So for example, if you're a student right now and you've been struggling, you're really pressured, and your mental health is not so great, the worst thing that you could do because of this pressure of the exams coming up is to stop the mental health practices, is, for example, to start limiting your sleep and sleeping 5 hours a night or 6 hours or 7 hours a night instead of getting a full night of rest. Maybe you stop spending time with your friends because you really want to focus. It's actually the things that would improve your mental health that will get you the highest grades in school. And I know this seems really weird, but I recommend all students to not study for more than like 6 hours a day, which is a big shock to a lot of students because they're like, wait. The culture here is to study for 10 hours. No. The culture of the average to slightly higher than average performers is to study 12 hours a day. But the absolute top students on any country are always studying around 6 hours, and then they spend some time with their friends and their family and they get a full night of rest. They eat clean, nutritious food. They exercise every day. They get sunlight, adventure. Keep up the things that improve your mental health. Freds plays. Hey Hamza, I've recently been seeing progress in the gym and it feels amazing, but I found myself more and more comparing my progress to others and generally feeling less satisfied with my progress, seeing as others have made such greater. Any advice on how I should go about stopping myself from over-comparing and causing myself to feel self-conscious? A lot of love, bro. This is a very interesting question, and I don't think a lot of people know this. But comparing yourself to others is an absolutely fundamentally normal part of the human existence. You've probably seen all these like cliche, like feel good, these influencers and all these Instagram quotes like, oh, don't compare yourself to others, just compare yourself to who you were yesterday. That's irrelevant. That's not how humans work. We will always compare against others. Just the issue is that now we have too many people to compare against. Thousands of years ago, we were in tribes of around 150. Our communities was 150 people. And so if you compared yourself to the men in that tribe, there was probably 20, 30 men that you compared yourself to. And that was a good thing that helped you excel. But now we have too many people that we can compare with. Our tribes are still technically 150. It always will be. The weird number for human connection is about 150. It always will be in terms of our physical lives. But then online, we see too many people that we can connect with. So Fred's plays, and to anyone else watching this, if you find yourself comparing against others, it isn't that, this concept of, oh, I'm comparing myself against others and I've got to stop. No. Comparing yourself against others is very normal. It's just that you're seeing too many people who your brain is convincing that, okay, they're in our tribe too. So the real way to stop comparing yourself to others is actually to stop spending so much time on the internet. And that in turn, especially if it means reduced social media time, is going to be one of the greatest things that you do for your mental health. So that was my full guide to improving your mental health. And if you've made it this far of the video, if you've especially done the practical, actionable steps that I've mentioned, then good on you. You have my respect for getting this far in a topic that is so deeply important to me personally. Improving my mental health has changed my life forever, and it's something that I will always maintain. The life that I get to live now, a life of success, love, joy, I'll never go back. I hope you'll join me on this lifelong journey of maintaining these good habits that will keep us just mentally healthy, and to understand that your mental health is the greatest asset that you will have. That's not something to overlook. Any time that you spend learning about or improving your mental health will pay off tenfold. Once again, there was a bunch of things that I've said that I've linked in this video, in the cards and stuff. So you can have a look at all of that if you haven't taken the mental health test or you want to see more videos from me. I've linked them all below. If you feel like this video may have changed your life, then make sure you save it somewhere and you can probably recap it 4 months from now, 6 months from now. You might have forgotten some things, so you can save it to your watch later. I think it helps the YouTube algorithm if you comment and if you leave a like on the video. It's always cringe saying that, but if you do want to help this video perform and other men finding it, then you can do you can spam the comments, or you can like it, or you can share it with your friends. You can subscribe to this channel if you want to see more videos like this. My name is Hamza Ahmed. I'm leading a movement of young men who are just so totally focused on improving their lives. And if you're interested in that, you can have a look at some of the videos on this channel. Do the hard work, especially when you don't feel like it. Mwah.